Hi everyone, it's Pippa from the Advantage here, Specialist Support Services for Girls and Women with ADHD. This video is a kind of follow-on from the last one I did on ADHD and eating disorders and disordered eating. It occurred to me the following day as I was walking my dog that I hadn't really shared with you what disordered eating actually looks like. I think I had just said something like, well, it's a misordered, wrong-ordered relationship between you and food and possibly your body image and maybe a link to exercise, but I hadn't really shared with you what it might look like, and I thought I probably need to find out what it looks like, and then if I feel that it's information that you guys should have, I should share it with you. So I have now discovered what it looks like, and indeed I do think it is worth sharing, so here it is. So if you're wondering, am I a disordered eater? These are the things that you should look for, okay? So disordered eating is when people are frequently on diets and they are thinking a lot about their weight, their food, dieting to the point that it informs other things that they're doing, to the point that it kind of controls their sort of everyday decisions. And that perhaps there isn't room for much else in their life either, that it's sort of bordering on a bit of an obsession. How much do I weigh? How many calories have I consumed today? What exercise do I need to do to burn that off? And so on. Also, if you are experiencing anxiety around certain foods, that can be a symptom of disordered eating. Skipping meals, going up and down with your weight, being preoccupied with your body image, or a specific part of your body, or aiming for a particular number on the scale. When these things become big in our lives, when again it seems that they're squeezing out other things that are important, then we are possibly experiencing disordered eating. If we have routines and rituals around food, feelings of guilt and shame associated with certain food, feelings of loss of control around food, some compulsive eating habits, if we are regularly using exercise or restricting our food intake or fasting or purging to make up for bad foods, again, symptoms of disordered eating. And again, then finally, if our thinking around food is preventing us from joining in with our family, our friends, our community in food-related activities, then we are experiencing a disordered relationship with food. So that's what disordered eating looks like. How does it connect to ADHD? Well, healthy eating is pretty tricky for ADHDers. Well, for many of us, I should say. I dare say there are some people out there who've got it correct. Congratulations, very happy for you. But for many of us, the amount of executive functioning required to make decisions around healthy eating consistently, it eludes us. We are often very well intentioned, but we do find consistency and following through quite tricky. So in order for us to sort of manage this effectively, we have to be pretty committed and interested in making it work. The rest of the information I'm going to give you today is based on advice from Roberto Oliviada. He is a clinical psychologist at Harvard, and he's an expert in ADHD and eating disorders and many other things, I'm sure. He says there are kind of 5 principles that people with ADHD should bear in mind, try to practice in order that they do have a healthy, ordered relationship with food. So the first one is about mindful eating. And you know, when you sometimes hear the word mindful, you're like, as if my mind is so busy, how can I possibly be kind of in the moment? And it's true that adults with ADHD, women with ADHD, I think we probably do eat too many calories. So we probably sort of bigger amounts than are good for us. Undoubtedly, we eat when we're doing other things at the same time. For example, maybe when we're driving, maybe when we're working, like on the computer or something. We just sort of grab and go, and then we don't keep track of what's going into our bodies. We lack awareness, I guess. So what Roberto is suggesting is that first of all, we actually note down for a whole week what we actually consume. So if it goes into our mouth, it goes on the list. It could be a handwritten list, it could be on your phone, it could be photographs, in fact, of everything. And then at the end of the week, you review and consider, when you actually look at the evidence, does that reflect what you thought you'd eaten? The amount, the types of food, when you describe your diet to other people, is what you've actually eaten reflective of that? Another thing that he suggests is good is that because we often don't really interpret signals terribly well of being hungry and being full, he says it's very good for us to have a routine of regular times in the day when we will be eating. And it is, of course, true that we do thrive on a routine and structure. I know that's a bit counterintuitive, but it does work very well for us. So the example he gives is breakfast at 8 o'clock in the morning, having a snack at 11, having lunch at 1, snack at 3, dinner at 6, snack at 8. Now, obviously, that's a suggestion, but I think the pattern of those 6 fixed periods for eating, and that it goes kind of meal, snack, meal, snack, meal, snack, that is probably what we should aim for. You would probably need to tweak the times to suit your schedule and how you get up in the morning and so on. So, first of all, being aware of what we're eating. Second of all, establishing times for eating. And then he says, eat at a table. So at this point, Pippa's recognising that she is in fact quite disordered in her eating. I do eat at the table when I have friends around and on a Sunday, but because quite often I eat alone, and it's normally a kind of refuelling moment to get me through the day, to get my uni work done, in order that I can fit my clients in, or it's normally a rush. So I don't often eat at the table, but Roberto says that because we are more likely to eat while doing other things, watching TV, driving the car, studying, whatever it is, and we are more likely to be unaware of what we're consuming, and we're going to probably do it quite quickly, and it will not be a ordered experience with food. He says that the kitchen table is the place to eat, and that our brain needs to associate that place with eating, and not eating literally in every place, in the house, in the car, on the street, whatever. That we should have a place for eating, and that will be helpful. He says to watch out for portion size. Because the ADHD brain typically does crave volume, and he suggests that one little hack for this is to just use a smaller plate or a smaller bowl, because a full small bowl is very satisfying to the ADHD brain, rather than a big bowl that's half full, if you know what I mean. So that's something. So being more mindful around food is what Roberto is suggesting will be helpful for us. Secondly, to try and keep a lid on the impulsive eating. Pippa sees herself here too. Obviously, impulsivity is a core symptom of ADHD, and all of us with ADHD will experience this to a greater or lesser degree. But when we are impulsive, we can consume too much and consume the wrong foods, because we're not thinking first, is this a good idea? Is this what my body needs? And we're not really listening to our the signals from our brain to our body. So these are some suggestions, he says, for curbing impulsive eating. The first is to make sure we are properly hydrated through the day, and that even before we have a meal, we should have a glass of water, because this is going to help us feel satisfied by the time the meal ends, make us feel more satisfied, I should say, by the time the meal ends. He also suggests taking deep breaths before we begin eating. Even 5 deep breaths, he says, is going to sort of reset your brain and get you more in a mindful habit, I guess, more aware of what you're doing. He says even 20 seconds to ground yourself can help create a pause button that makes you a more mindful eater. So just trying to say to yourself, right, I'm in the moment, this is my lunch. What have I got for my lunch? Why is lunch important? I'm going to enjoy this, I'm going to savour it. He says just doing that can make a world of difference. He says also, when you serve yourself a meal, He says don't sit there with the serving dish like right next to you, because obviously it's incredibly easy and inattentively we could just reach for it and put some more on our plate without really realising that we did that. So his tip is keep serving bowl on the worktop, let's say, and then you walk to the table with your plate of food, and then you will be more mindful about putting more. He says put your fork down at every bite. Oh golly, I know I don't do that. I know that I eat incredibly quickly. My husband often comments on that. I'm not exactly sure why I do it. I think it might be because for me, a lot of the time food isn't that important. It's more of it's like a refueling station to get me to the next thing. So I'm just like, come on, because I have something else more interesting to do. And I know that I should slow down, and it is not good for me to eat in this way. So his tip is put your fork down or spoon down after every mouthful, and don't pick it up until I have chewed and swallowed every single mouthful. He says don't pick as you go when you're preparing food. I think that's probably obvious, but so easy to do. And again, we're just not aware of how much we're consuming if we do it that way. So to be aware of that. And if your house, like so my house, for example, we have a treat box, or it's kind of like 3 different boxes in a pantry of different things. He says make sure that kind of those kind of food items are hard to reach, so don't have them on the counter. Just you can just pick in and out of them. Make them on a high shelf inside a box with a lid that you have to reach for and open the lid and so on, just to make you consider why am I doing this? Maybe catch yourself in that moment. Do I really need this? Is it time for a snack in back? You might ask yourself that. So that's about impulsive eating. And then the third thing he talks about, again, I see myself here, emotional eating. I don't know whether this is an every woman thing or an ADHD woman thing. For a long time, I was just a woman. I didn't realise I had ADHD. It's certainly been a feature of my life anyway. When times get difficult for me, I'm like, seriously, where is that chocolate? Find me some now. I will, go through every box and every drawer in the freezer for some ice cream or something, because I think it will make me feel better. And obviously, when I think about that, it isn't really going to make me feel better. It isn't actually going to make any difference, certainly not in the long term. So Roberto says that because we do struggle with emotional regulation, and it is likely we are going to experience more incidents of stress or anxiety, we need to make sure that we do not connect that with eating. He says catch yourself when you're bored, because again, that's another time I'm bored, I'm empty, I'm not really stimulated. I know, I'll eat, because eating is stimulating, right? So he's saying notice you're feeling, and if you are feeling bored, make sure you have a list of other things you could be doing to stimulate yourself that don't involve food. So like, I don't know, if you're a puzzle person, you've got a book of puzzles on hand. If you are, a really sociable person, your phone is there. You phone someone, you chat with them, or you answer your, write emails, like nice ones, but not work related ones. You write joyful emails to friends and family. You could sing to your favourite songs, have a playlist, dance around the house. But don't reach for food when you're bored. It isn't going to make you any less bored, and while it may be stimulating while you're doing it, that stimulation is not going to last for very long, so you're just going to reach for more food, which is obviously a cycle that isn't going to be helpful. When you are anxious or angry, he says, again, use your breath. Catch yourself, deep breaths in and out, reflect. What do I need right now? What is going to be helpful for me? And instead of eating, find a different soothing technique. Now, often us ADHDers are quite sensitive to sensory input. Sensory input can be triggering for us, but also sensory input can be very soothing for us if we understand what works well. So, for example, a weighted blanket can be incredibly soothing and comforting. For example, different scents, like smells, they can be very calming and comforting. So explore that. Think about what sensory things you could do that you might find soothing when you're feeling emotional. That could be calming rather than eating. He suggests as well that we are creative in how we express our emotions. He suggests movement. He suggests like maybe sort of martial arts when there are certain moves and poses, yoga, Pilates, anything that kind of involves us, you know, moving our whole body in a certain way, in quite a creative way. He thinks that that's going to help us with managing our emotions. And then I guess really being aware how impactful negative emotion can be on us, and how that when we are experiencing big emotions, that when that happens to us, we are vulnerable to disordered eating, and try and sort of plan in advance for this, you know, have a go-to box of, you know, of soothing materials, strategies, pictures, colouring, you know, whatever works for you, but have it to hand, like a, you know, like some people have a, you know, they carry like a little first aid box around wherever they go. You know, we should have this kind of box for us when we're kind of feeling emotionally vulnerable, feeling emotions in a big way, that makes sure that we don't lean on food. He also says that because we're lacking in attention sometimes, we're not terribly good at being 100% sure what we are eating. So a tip for an ADHD brain really is basically to steer away from processed foods, full stop. That we do much better with sort of whole foods that don't have artificial colours, artificial sweeteners, don't have sugar. I think they call it clean eating, don't they? Like, we do better with that. Our brain function is very well supported by lean proteins, by fibre, by dark green vegetables. All of that is very good for us. So if we are not able to follow that kind of sort of plan for whatever reason, probably because we haven't factored enough time to shop and prepare this healthy meal, if we are going to be consuming sort of ready foods, he says that we must be looking at the labels. We must be really aware of calorie contents, fat contents, salts, all of this kind of thing, and try and you know, make the best choices in those moments. I think a lot of supermarkets here in the UK anyway, a lot of them have like a kind of traffic light system on them. So you would know, for example, if, you know, if, I don't know, fat, sugar and salt are all red, and there's another alternative where they're amber and green, that would be a better choice. Always to make sure that we have healthy staples available to us at home, in our car, at our workplace, so we don't reach for things that aren't good for us in a kind of grab and go, inattentiveness, impulsive kind of moment as we're queuing in the supermarket. He suggests making sure that at home you always have lean protein sources like turkey and chicken breast. Yogurt, Greek yogurt is ideal for this. Nuts in portion-sized containers. Oily fish available like salmon, sardines and mackerel. Lots of fresh fruit and vegetables that's, you know, very easy for you to reach for and, you know, and consume quite quickly. And he says to try and make sure that all our meals anyway contain good sources of protein and fibre-rich foods. His final thing that he talks about is holding the big picture in mind. He says people with ADHD have good intentions, and don't we just? Often we are full of good ideas and, oh man, yeah, I know what I need to do. This is going to make it all so much better. But the execution of the plan, or at least the consistent execution of the plan, can often trip us up. So he says that we need more than good intentions, obviously, to get these things done. He says make sure you do follow the regular pattern of eating through the day, and that avoid you know, waiting until your stomach is like turning over in somersaults and, you know, making noises before you think, oh, maybe I'm hungry. You know, that if we do eat you know, at these regular points in the day, we should avoid that, and then we won't make decisions based on the fact that suddenly we've noticed we're, you know, actually starving. He suggests taking an hour a week every day, working out when that's good for you. I mean, for some people, this might be like a Sunday afternoon activity. Other people, you know, maybe Monday morning, but whenever. But just take an hour to consider, what are you going to be eating in the week ahead? What do you need to buy? What preparation is required? How does that fit in with your, you know, what's happening, your diary for those days? And to try and make the choices that are going to, you know, kind of be like the easiest on the ADHD brain, you know, like, you know, be kind to ourselves with that. He also talks about sleep, guys, and I know that's a huge problem for many ADHDers. We can really struggle to get off to sleep. We can wake up a lot in the night. We can struggle to get up in the morning. Sleep's very difficult for many of us, I know. That is something we need to work on though, because if we do get good quality and good quantity of sleep, we are so much better supported with our symptom management, and then we can make good ordered choices around food. He points out that when a body doesn't get enough sleep, that our metabolic rate will drop, and it's kind of like an evolutionary thing that we hold on to body fat at that time. It's as if our brains and bodies assume that we're not sleeping because there's a higher food need, we're in some kind of jeopardy, and that our body doesn't understand that we haven't gone to bed at 3 a.m. because of a kind of, you know, evolutionary crisis, that it's probably just binge watching on Netflix that's kind of got to that point. So sleep's really important. And then the final point that he says as kind of a general principle is about exercise. He's not talking about joining gyms and, you know, like 5, you know, organised workouts a week. He's just saying basically get moving. He says, and we know this, I'm sure, that exercise helps regulate our appetite, our mood, our cognitive abilities, and helps us manage our ADHD symptoms 100%. He says that, you know, establishing these kind of new routines by yourself is quite tricky. So it's probably a good idea to do this, you know, with the support of people that you live with. If you live by yourself, maybe do it in tandem with a friend, so you can kind of check in on each other and offer each other encouragement and support. But he's saying, like, in terms of the exercise, it hasn't got to be, you know, hour and a half, you know, full weight workout in a gym. He's saying, in fact, just getting moving 20 minutes or 30 minutes a day, that could make quite a difference. Any sort of physical activity, and his point here is, he says, you will never say to yourself, gosh, I so regret being active. It isn't going to happen. Being active can only bring rewards and make you feel better. He says things like, you know, make choices about sort of, you know, using the stairs, not the elevator, walking to work rather than driving to work, or parking further away and walking, this kind of thing. You know, taking a neighbour's dog for a walk, or taking your own dog for a walk, in fact. Anything like that will be useful. Just getting moving every day. And then I think the final thing really is from me, because I have found exploring this subject, I was sort of prompted to do it by a few people that I've come across that have had such terrible experiences around unsupported, undiagnosed ADHD and eating disorders or disordered eating. But I will say, honestly, as I have gone through this stuff on disordered eating, I really do see myself there. And I wouldn't have thought that. Had I not really looked into it. I would have thought, no, I am ordered in my eating. I do, you know, I do make good choices and so on. But I realise now that I see myself in the things that Roberto talks about as kind of ADHD food trips, I guess, that how we trip ourselves up with food. And getting ahead of this, getting on top of it is not easy by any point. We need to really become aware of our negative thoughts around food, and just how wicked, in fact, we can be to ourselves, how we can really, the way we speak to ourselves around food can generate a massive amount of shame and sort of judgment on ourselves. And we need to get in front of that, because that type of kind of negative self-narrative, that is a barrier to healthy eating and a healthy soul, really. So when you notice that you're doing it, tell your inner voice to be quiet. The first job, of course, is to notice it. That's the first thing. Once we notice it, enough, be quiet. And then if we can, start to replace those words with words of kindness and forgiveness to ourselves. That will support our desire for healthy, ordered eating habits. He says, don't judge yourself if you engage in mindless eating every now and then. We all do it, of course we do. The trick is, rather than letting that defeat you and just giving into it, that you own it, you acknowledge it, and you say to yourself, I'm going to pick myself up from this. You know, think about what made you go there in the first place, identify what it was, and think, what could I put in place to prevent that from happening again? So anyway, I hope this has been useful information on ADHD and disordered eating. I really hope when I was talking about eating disorders that not many of you saw yourselves in that and could relate from a personal point of view, because I know it's a long way to come back from there. But I hope that information had been helpful, that I already recorded. And then I hope that this has just raised a level of awareness around eating habits and ADHD, and how very easy it is for us to fall into disordered eating, and some of the things that we can do to protect ourselves from it in order that we give our ADHD brains the best chance. So I will see you again soon. Thank you for listening.